Hi, Shannon Waller here, and welcome to Team Success. I am thrilled today to have someone that I have actually approached and gotten to know, and who I think has incredible information that I cannot wait to share. So this is an official author interview with Kyle Mealy, and Kyle has written a phenomenal book called The Next Level Revenue Formula: How Basic Math Can Yield Breakthroughs. And so, Kyle, thank you so much for joining me about this. You and I like to talk about all the things. It's actually a little tough to narrow it down to focus on just this, but I am thrilled to have you on the podcast. You're a multidimensional entrepreneur with an incredibly rich background, which I think is fascinating in and of itself. I will say that you and I connected at EOS. I actually got to see you give us a short presentation about a charity, which was really cool a couple years ago at the EOS conference for people running on EOS. And then last year, you gave a phenomenal talk about the next level revenue formula. And I was like, I want my people to know about this, which is why you're here. And then we connected on a couple other levels too, which was super fun. So thank you for being here. And that is my very brief introduction of the two of us. But what do people need to know about Kyle? How do you like to introduce yourself?
Well, I'll start with a whole pile of gratitude because I'm thankful to be here. I'm thankful to share. I hope I will live up to that introduction, and I'll do my best. What do people need to know? I shouldn't be here. That's probably where to start. No, I mean that because you said rich history. That is a very thoughtful way to put it. I think, I've been able to put the pieces together in hindsight, and it makes sense, right? Hindsight's 2020. But I do think no one would expect where I, have been able to go with where I started. And darn it, that's been a fun ride. So what do people need to know? All the wrong experiences that ended up in the right place.
There you go. Talk about just some of the entrepreneurial ventures that you have been a part of and helped to transform. Because the entrepreneurial path, to your point, is not predictable. If anyone has seen the brilliant Gaping Void cartoon, that's how people expect it to go. And it's this, bottom left, upper right deal. And then how it actually happens. And the friggin' thing is a chaotic mess with a crayon and a scribble that goes all over the map. Finally ends up in the same place, but not in any predictable form. So I wouldn't expect anything different, my friend. So talk about karate a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to take you one step before karate. That's a good.
Oh, good.
Because it's interesting because I didn't start in an entrepreneurial venture. That is not how my family, nurtured me. It was you get a good job and you sit there for 30 years. And so here I was out of college, a lab manager. I was the youngest person in the facility by 23 years. And it was just kind of a wild world, right? Bunch of blue collar guys who've been doing this 25 years. I come in, I'm the lab manager now. And so they have to take some direction from, this kid. And I got a really, really quick course on how to earn respect and also how to communicate with people who are already smart in their own right, but having to do something different because it was my job to take, ultimately the lab to the next level. And that's what I did. After about 2 years, I won Lab of the Year there, which I know it doesn't make sense. Like, how did that happen? But, I worked on process and systems, and I immensely valued data. And it's important to know that it was a wastewater treatment plant lab, which is, again, how did I end up here?
So sexy, so sexy.
Right? Dirty water in, clean water out. But it's important for the book because what we really did was we treated the water at different stages through a whole bunch of funnels and pipes. That's your clue as to where we're going.
Yes.
And discreetly measuring each step of the process and then treating each step of the process kind of is like this foreshadowing to where I ended up. And so, of course, as one does, one takes an immediate right turn after they realize that they cannot do this for the next 10 years of their life. And that would be, death. Any entrepreneur knows exactly what I'm talking about when I say this. I went and joined a karate school as the operations manager.
As one does.
As one does. Now, of course, there's a little backstory. The person, went to this karate school with, he was my mentor. I earned my black belt with him when I was 9. And this is another key part of the story because I think it also changed my DNA. And I think, I really valued how to build confidence, and I really learned how to really understand training and teaching from there. And so confidence is just a series of small achievable goals that you hit over and over again with the help of a mentor. And so I think I'm talking to an audience who knows what a great mentor and a great, coach and community can do for you. And so I had that with him. And so he was my entrepreneurial first venture. And the reality was he was working 60 hours a week, making $60,000. I mean, that was not a great life. And he knew I knew systems and he knew I knew karate because he had taught it to me. And so my job was to figure it out. And so that's what we had to do. And I only knew, from my past is, well, if you just measure things, maybe good stuff happens. And so, in this chaotic entrepreneurial land, it was just me, myself, and one other mostly part-time lady. And, we'd been doing this experiment for 6 months, and I could tell it wasn't going awfully great because, I wasn't a salesperson, never wanted to be a salesperson. Again, foreshadowing, because that was what I do. And he sat me down, pulled out the P&L. We were using Great Game of Business at that point.
Jack Stack. Love it. I've been to the factory.
Oh, no way.
Yes way.
No. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. So he pulled out the P&Ls, the first P&L I'd ever seen. And he's like, this line says we made no money last year, since I started. This line says that we made the same amount. And here's what January is looking like so far. It looks like we're actually going to lose money. And, my biggest fear going into this whole thing was not having a job. And I gave up this career for this, thing. And at that moment, I said, I'm never not going to know where the money is.
I think those are some of the most powerful lessons. I am never going to feel this pain again, ever.
Nope.
Makes you really smart, really fast.
Yep. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to learn this P&L thing. I'm going to look at every expense, and I'm also going to figure out where the money comes from. So that was kind of when I drifted over to marketing and sales and really started to understand it. And all I knew how to do was measure things. So I measured, and then I just couldn't help but find the patterns. And then I just suddenly realized if I do this event outside of the building, the next month is better. Gosh, and if I, talk to more people, we have more people who show up to our first lesson. And when I started to actually do the math, we started to realize there were very clear trends. And then the more systems we put in place, the more consistently we held those systems together, the more predictable this whole thing came. And so I didn't realize this until much, much later in my life that, I sat down, it was the end of that next year. I'm like, hey, I think we're going to hit 1 million next year. Here's my math. I projected 1,033,000 because I knew we were going to lose 3.3% from credit cards. And so it was at least $1 million will go through the bank. We did 1,036,000. So a year in advance, I predicted it that closely.
Nice.
I now realize that's actually a pretty good skill to have, to be able to predict how much money you'll have in the bank, and everybody feels a lot happier. And that was a crazy moment because we were one of the first schools in the country to ever hit, $1 million out of a little karate school, right? You don't think of a karate school as $1 million business.
And then he can take more than 60,000 out of the business.
So yeah, that's when life changed. So we were making multiple 6 digits, and he was working 6 hours a week, and life was pretty good. And then he said something to me, that I never forgot, and it kind of was an echo from my lab career. He's like, in 10 years, you can take this over from me. And I'm like, I can't do this for 10 years more in a row.
You're like, oh no, another.
Here comes another right turn. I'm all of a sudden, a partner manager at a digital marketing agency because I've really fallen in love with marketing and sales. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I get to do both. Great. I'm in, and I'll, go join the big kid world, because at that point, people were calling me sir, and I wore pajamas and I didn't have shoes. So okay. This is how my life was. We were at a $3 million digital marketing agency, and 6 months later, I was, presenting at EOS conference for this agency. Yeah, crazy, right? How did I end up there? And then, they went up to about 7.5 million in the next 2.5 years. And that was when something shifted in me as I spent all this time with the people around EOS and entrepreneurs and owners, and I started to kind of orient who I was. And then out came next level revenue. And so there's a story in there too, but that's kind of my path to get to entrepreneurship, where I realized that everybody was asking the same question over and over again. They're always asking, where are the leads? Where's the money?
Yes. Well, and how you put this together, which is what we're going to talk about, is the next level revenue formula.
Sure.
If you're listening to this, raise your hand if you're a fan of revenue and cash flow and profit, right? It's like profit and teamwork are my 2 favorite words of business, just to let you know. But you don't get profit unless you get revenue first. And what's really interesting, and why I'm so glad I went to your talk at EOS, because you actually laid it out, the system that was consistent amongst the lab, the karate school, the digital marketing agency. It's like you could see the through line, right, for each of those. And then you also laid out some great client examples. And I happen to know a couple of them, which is also super cool. I'm like, check, I knew that one. It was kind of blacked out, but I could tell. So that was really fun. And it was like, oh, this really works for entrepreneurial companies. And you had an insight into it that I'm like, because I like marketing. It's been a hobby of mine. Turns out I was a marketing leader for a year and that was enough. Thank you very much. But it was not my unique ability, but I've always, like you, been interested in it. I think it's interesting. It's fascinating. I like when marketing works. I started off in sales, right? So we have a little bit of that in common, although I'm not nearly as strategic about it as you are. Usability teamwork is more my jam. But it's interesting because you really laid it out so clearly. And this is what I'm so excited for everyone to get a piece of, is to understand how you can start to apply this mindset, this thinking, this process to your business. And it's interesting because one of my team leader clients was there and I'd gotten a copy of your book and I literally dragged him over. I'm like, you have to meet Kyle. Because I know how his brain works. I'm like, this is going to absorb into his brain even better than mine. So if you're interested in revenue, you're interested in marketing, you're interested in sales, you hate the leaks that you see in the system, because we're going to talk about that a little bit, then this conversation is for you. Or if you're doing work and you don't know what difference it's making, you probably want to listen too, because if it doesn't tie into some of what we're going to be talking about today, it is not a contribution to the business. And so I think everything that you do ties in the most crucial activities of a company, but also we get distracted from a cajillion different things and we kind of forget some of the core. So I like maximizer strategies. That's my jam. And for me, this is a maximizer strategy to help people produce all of the zeros and dollar signs that they possibly could from their business. So let's talk about the next level revenue formula. And I like it because you've actually used next level a couple different times already. So it seems very sure appropriate. What is the next level revenue formula? Like, what is it? I love your story about how you got here and you decided to like make this available to the world. But what is it? I mean, I could try and talk about it, but you'll do a much better job.
What I realized was there was really just simple math that I was using. Everybody's like, how are you making these businesses grow? And when I did this deep reflection, I wrote a 60,000 word manifesto to start this book, and it's on the shelf. Someday it'll come out. But what I really realized is it just kept coming back to really simple math and just really thinking about the buyer journey as one thing, not marketing, not sales. And I was sitting there and I was listening to all these CEOs and COOs, integrators, visionaries, just always asking the same three questions, and neither marketing nor sales had the answers. And I'm sitting over here and I'm talking to someone who's frustrated and I'm looking at my laptop going, but I have all the answers, but you're asking different questions. You're asking not what I do. Why is there such a disconnect? And so what came of it was I wrote 3 very critical pieces of IP that solve those 3 big questions. And the first one is always, is it working and how do we know? The second is always, what do we even say? And then the third is, what's the ROI?
Okay.
And so the formula is when you bring those 3 together, plus some supporting tools that are in the book, you can build really predictable, profitable revenue machines. That's what happens. The first tool is is it working, is it not? This is the funnels and the pipes. I call that the revenue cascade.
Okay, yes.
This one is the anchor tool. If I had to label one as the anchor tool, this is it.
Okay.
I don't want to look at any business without knowing its revenue cascade. The second is our revenue strategy statement. It's what marketing and sales say together, and it's more than a value prop. It's more than any, branding. It's not a marketing thing. It's revenue thing. And then the third is ROAS. It's the cheeky cousin of ROAS, ROAS. This is ROASS. Ass. Yeah, somebody came up to me at EOS and was like, I'm not sure, but did you think about that before you trademarked it? And I'm like, oh yeah, I did.
Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah, I did.
So define what ROASS, what's the acronym for?
The traditional one is ROAS, return on advertising spend, ROAS. Mine is return on all sales and marketing spend. It just wasn't as fun saying ROASmus, so I went with ROAS. And now it's memorable.
Yes, it is. Okay. Well, yeah, so all sales and marketing spend. Okay, to my mind, because I was reviewing the book and reviewing your summary, I'm like, oh my God, the number just got a lot bigger. that I'm spending?
Well, this is always the question. When do we spend more? When do we spend less? And so I see these incorrect kind of old school thinking questions is how I would label it. I used to think and you helped me with this, I used to kind of be apologetic about my formula, and I used to think it was an evolution. I'm now labeling it a revolution, and I'm not lost on the fact that REV is in there, because I have seen diehard, hardcore marketers and sales execs look at this and be like, I've done this for 30 years. I've never thought of it like this. It's mind blowing. Mm-hmm. And so the question people always ask is, well, how much do I need to spend to get it? And I'm like, that's the wrong question. How much are you spending right now? And is it the right spend? And is it efficient? Yeah. Because if it isn't efficient, it's a giant waste. And if you put more into it right now, you're going to get less out of it. And that I can't stomach, right? I have to know where the money is, and I got to make sure there's money left over. So ROAS makes you challenge every dollar you're spending in marketing and sales, and it weights them appropriately. So if you're very heavy on the sales side, lots of sales team, lots of sales commission, all of a sudden you're gulping when you build out your ROAS number. You go, and that advertising all of a sudden looks very different. And so you get really curious really fast about what's working, what's not. And this is why I say the revenue cascade is the anchor, because ROAS can tell you if it's efficient or not, but you're going to say, well, where's it going? Revenue cascade lights that side of the equation.
Okay, so let's talk more about the revenue cascade.
Sure.
Before I subtract money, I need to make sure there's something to subtract it from, right? Because I'm looking at those numbers going, those are big numbers. Like what we spend on marketing and sales is a lot, right?
It's a lot.
I know, I'm looking at, there's lots of numbers and zeros there. So let's talk about the revenue cascade. How do you measure that? How do you track it? Because as you said, you have a different formula than most people, but you found a way to answer this question. Is it working?
Yeah, so revenue cascade, just imagine in your mind a staircase, right? Just imagine it that way. And, water comes in the top and it falls down these stairs, okay? Well, we're going to label each of the stairs a different piece of the buyer journey, right? The buyer journey is someone who has no idea what you do, doesn't even know they have a problem, right? They're just at the beginning and they become aware of your business. So awareness, typically at the top of the marketing funnel, interested. They make some sort of decision, right? They download a lead magnet, they attend a webinar. I call it kind of the de-anonymization. They make themselves known.
Right.
They show up to you. They've made some decision to unveil that they're interested. Beyond interested, they're really leaning in. And then they ask you to take an action. That's kind of the lead portion where answer my question, follow up on this referral, right? Take an action with me. And that kind of ends marketing. And then now we're on the second half of the staircase. If you're kind of visualizing this in your mind, you're in your classic kind of sales process. You're doing some sort of discovery, some sort of assessment if they're the right fit, or just some sort of work that they have to do in front of a presentation or a proposal, and then you sign deal, right? So it almost always kind of looks as 4 and 4 on this, ramp cascade. And what we've done is instead of trying to mislabel or vanity metric measure, I'm measuring the things that matter. And so, most people on their scorecards, if you're running on EOS, you would have, website visitors, leads, and cash. And I kind of chuckle. It's like, what is that website visitors telling you? Have you ever had a time when your website visitors went up and you didn't have more leads and you were really frustrated?
Right.
That means you're not using revenue cascade. And so now on each of those stairs, imagine a bucket, and it's now labeled with it. And you remember my buckets. Okay.
So I want everyone to picture this. Kyle does this in his talks, right? And he lays out all these buckets and you're like, what the hell is going on? And then crumpled up pieces of paper. Yes. It's very fun. Okay, keep going. This is good.
So what I say is, okay, we're going to start at the top. We're going to start at awareness, and we're going to fill that bucket with a bunch of things. And I'm like, what? And I put up on the screen usually, hey, here's what awareness is. Who's ever done a radio ad? Who's ever, done paid advertising on social media, who does social media in general, event, all of the things. And so they write it, they crumple it, and I put it in the awareness bucket. And I go, when you're measuring website visitors, which isn't even awareness, by the way, you're putting them in a bucket, and then you're throwing this bucket across the room, trying to have all these crumpled pieces of paper land in your lead bucket. It never works. Oh. And so all I said was, instead of just trying to throw it towards the lead bucket, what if there was another stair right there to catch the bucket as you tip over? That's interest. Generally, we create awareness. And if you think about your own experience when you buy things, if you see a commercial or if you hear a radio ad, what do you always do? Most people go right to the website. And so what I say, which is not traditional, is to put website visits in your interest bucket. And all of a sudden, something magical happens when you're starting to measure it like this. You see, gosh, I did all this work, and all of a sudden I have more website visitors. Well, that's a good thing. But you see, most people don't spend a lot of time on the homepage. Most people come in through other ways or look up your services or your team page next. Now we're starting to make some decisions about if I'm going to engage with this company. So that's your third bucket. And what you can start to see mathematically over and over again is you raise awareness, you raise interest, and you raise decision. They all kind of move at the same pace. Mm-hmm. And you can do that, you can start to see leads coming. And then you just start to measure the ratios. And you're looking for stuck points. You're looking for these points where, gosh, this bucket was full and then this bucket is empty. Where are they going?
Yep.
So that's revenue cascade. And then you carry it all the way down to the sales process.
Okay, which I want to talk about because I find sales processes really interesting. And
sure, yeah.
I like how you've kind of reordered a lot of the assumptions, because I've been in all of those conversations. I had a bit of a crash course in marketing when I took over the leadership role. Babs goes, just so you know, you're head of marketing and messaging. I'm like, what? How'd that work? We'll see. Team did okay, just saying, but it was a challenge. And I didn't give up anything. Also not a good idea. But the point is, yeah, we were measuring all those things, but it still felt a little bit mysterious about how they all connected. So you've got a very well-documented process for figuring that out, so you can minimize the drop-offs, minimize the leaks between those, and start to measure something in a more predictable way, which is cool. So let's just go down to those steps in sales, because everyone wants to maximize their sales efforts. You know, sales salaries going up, you know, commissions are not cheap, and you want people to stay once they're in. So let's talk about that for a second.
Sure. Again, a very simple math, right? All these waterfalls, these little cascades are cascading towards a lead. A lead has to be dealt with, right? And then all we're looking for is this gap and disparity between these steps, because, you know, the big discovery I had as I kind of figured all this out, as I was hearing people begging for marketing strategy, right? You might hear of like, oh, we're doing all these random tactics, we need strategy. And I'm like, no, you're wrong still. It actually goes data first, then strategy, then tactics, because I can wow anybody with strategy. I can tell you some really cool strategies I've deployed, but it is meaningless if I'm assigning a strategy to fix a hole in one of these buckets if it doesn't have a hole.
No.
So that's what I usually come into is like, well, we just did this big podcast. And it's like, great. Which website did you send them to? And I found where people have a website that doesn't even have a contact us button. So they have these huge amount of website visitors, they don't have a contact us button. It's like, you don't understand the whole thing. So anyway, you pour it into sales. Now sales has to go through their process. And obviously underneath all these buckets are processes and tactics and strategies, what have you. But at the end of the day, you got to have enough discovery calls to have enough presentation calls to present enough proposals to sign enough deals. And here's my favorite part of all of this. Like, most businesses kind of understand that part. The marketing edition is really what's exciting. And now what you can do is you can say, I know I need 10 deals next month because I know that's worth, say, you know, 500,000, what, I don't know, whatever the math is, $50,000 for 10 deals. Well, I know I closed 1 out of 3 because that's my fall off rate. I'm measuring the steps. Okay. So if it's 1 out of 3, great. I need 4 presentations to send 3 proposals. Okay, so I need 4 presentations. Great. Okay, well, I get in front of, 80% of my discovery calls present. Okay, that's 5 discovery calls. And gosh, I'm really good at discovery call signing up. I'll get on them right away. I'm on them in a minute. So I need 6 leads. Well, if you can now work up and gosh, I need 100 people to get to my contact us page.
Yeah.
Okay. If I need 100 people, that's a decision. Now I need to get interest. I need 500 people to visit my service page, and I need 10,000 people to see my stuff. Gosh, those numbers start to make sense, and you can actually start to control those. And they're predictable. They're repeatable. They show up consistently. I can show you reams of data where it's like, gosh, we moved this lever, and all of a sudden all these other levers popped. So that's the beauty of it. And now you can be predictable. Now you're forecasting. That's how I did the million way back at the karate school, is I knew how many levers I had to pull to get the dollars I needed.
Here's what I love about this. We all know those separate, distinct things, but they're not integrated into a system, which I find fascinating. So this is super cool. And what I know from an entrepreneur standpoint, from a business owner standpoint, from a team leader's fabulous, one of my great team leaders who knows the numbers of his business like nobody else. He's actually friends with the person I introduced you to. He works with them, which is neat. So what's really cool about this is you give positive predictability. For most entrepreneurs, predictability is boring until it comes to cash flow.
Right. As soon as cash is on the line, I'm listening.
100%. And we talk about having cash flow confidence. In terms of one of the things at Coach, especially as you get into higher levels of the program and have a self-managing company, a self-multiplying company, and what allows you to do collaborations, which is free zone, is cash flow confidence. And if you don't have that, if you don't have predictable positive cash flow, you are back at the bottom trying to struggle that out.
You get sucked back into the business and you're back in there trying to fix all these buckets without maybe even knowing what the labels are.
100%. You add such intelligence and wisdom to the activities of what we're doing. So that's why I love this system. So let's talk about some success stories. Let's talk about some actual businesses that you've worked with where they had a leak in this particular bucket and you did this and this to fix it and this happened. I'm curious. And I know a couple of the ones that you talked about in the session, but that was a while ago. So yeah. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so generally the equation kind of plays out like this. There's a visionary who has struggled with marketing, has been frustrated by it, maybe tried to hire a salesperson, it didn't go well, or they have this kind of amalgamation is my favorite, right? Well, Susie in finance does a little marketing on the side, and then we have the sales guy, but he's kind of been here for 10 years, and I don't know if he's working or not, right? It's some version of this. And, one of my favorite client stories is he's a well-known thought leader. I love this guy to death. Love him to death. Well-known thought leader, 8,000 LinkedIn connections, really popular podcast, wrote the book on a category of business that I'm very fond of, which is, fractional. He had a tidy CRM, beautiful follow-up process. He was able to generate some leads. He had, a blog. I remember evaluating them as an organization going, I kept running my head against a wall from the outside thinking how could this business not be working? Everybody would say, this is a really well-marketed machine. This is great. And well, you see, that's where Rebcascade came in. As I laid it over, I started to realize, you have all this marketing and you're generating leads, but nobody's looking at your close rate and nobody's looking at all the steps between your sales processes. They were seeing leads were good, but money was low. And nobody was looking at, where were they falling off? And so it wasn't a marketing problem, even though I think they thought it was. It was not a marketing problem. It was actually a sales problem. And so when we revealed that there was a really low close rate, it sounds silly, but I'm we're just going to move from words to pretty pictures because our target audience was visionaries. And I'm not kidding. Their presentation was a Google Doc. It was 17 pages and lots of words. And when you zoom in, because I knew right where to focus, I could make a lot of actions. So we went from a 10% close rate to a 30% close rate with pretty pictures. Well, when you triple your close rate at that low of the funnel, you triple your business. Yeah. It's really simple. And so now over the last 12 months, we've moved all the way up to the top of the funnel and fixed those broken marketing pieces before we put money in. And so for me, I kind of get to float over where the funnel is weak. And I don't think about just sales or marketing. It's just I got to go to where the flow is stuck.
That is fascinating. Here's the other part of it, Kyle. I don't want you to underappreciate your capability here, is that you can look at that sales doc and go, oh, good luck with that. Right? But some other people might not.
Oh.
They might not know visionaries. They might not know that Pretty Pictures works and color. I learned about color and quick starts from Colby, which is kind of fun. Give me bolded words, have things jump out at me. Give me bullet points, please, God. And then let me get to the bottom line. Let me know where, when, how much, and I'll be able to make a decision. People don't get it and they want to kill me with words. And I'm no, it's not going to happen. So that's a great example. Do you want to say something else about that company?
Kind of a fun part of it was this was an example we got to go all over and, they ended up adding 100K in MRR in under 6 months. That's pretty wild. That was pretty fun.
Yeah. I love that. So what about a bigger company? What about a company that has either more established, a marketing team and a sales team, and they've been around for a while, or, they're not just the kind of scrappy company, but they've been established for a while?
Yeah, so this one's interesting. This
still work is my question.
Oh, yeah, I think there's a limit. I'm curious where the top of that limit is, but I'm just going to be humbly confident here and say I've yet to see it fail when it's applied.
Okay.
It's theory in that it hasn't failed yet at some of these kind of different sizes. I think 50 is going to be its ceiling, but
50 what, people or 50?
50 million.
50 million. Okay, got you.
This was about a $12 million company. They were selling huge partnerships to, some of the biggest logos on the planet when you think about in the kids space. Really interesting business. And they were beholden to one kind of golden marketing and salesperson. A rainmaker is what they were beholden to, who had no systems and just kind of made it all happen, right? So like this is a very real problem that really happens. They had, marketing and sales functions, but at the end of the day, it was all from this one person's relationships. And so our charge was to build a system that was reproducible without a rainmaker.
Seriously?
Yep.
And how'd it go?
Within, I think, about 4 months, and these are big. I mean, you're talking, things like Disney and Nickelodeon, like we're talking serious businesses. They had discovered 10 new partnerships in about 4 months' time now, those are 6 to 12 month sales cycle. Jury's still out on exactly how many will land. But my point here was they went from being beholden to someone to now having a fully fledged revenue cascade system to know what levers to pull and when. And it wasn't not attached to a single who. And for me, like that's actually a success story because now it's just simple math. It's like you just got to do enough of the right things and it'll all work out at the bottom. Obviously, it's an ongoing process, but I think that's a good example where you can still apply the rules. And the rules are simple. You got to put enough inputs at the top and make sure there's no leaky holes.
You make it sound so simple. I know it's not.
It's not.
I was trying to do the math thing and I was like, oh, I need help with this part when I went to apply it to our business. So, which I think is super cool. But back to that point, I heard a term from one of my clients 2 workshops ago. And she said something about if there's a single point of failure in my company. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, that's an interesting term. And then it turned out it was a person. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a lack of a system. It was a human. And that person, after 19 years, had just given notice. And they were like, ah. And there's nothing that keeps an entrepreneur up at night more than the fear of losing a top salesperson. Or if they got cancel, but hit by a bus or something like that. Or they decided to go start their own gig. I don't know. But that is a terrifying thought for an entrepreneur. And so to be able to have a system, which some of us are not great at creating on our own, that would actually kind of even out the success. And I know the best teams are, there's a great quote from Clifton, individuals are sharp, it's teams that are well-rounded, right? And so you can't just have a team of one sharp person to be ultimately successful with longevity. You want a whole bunch of capabilities spread out amongst more people. So I love that example. That's a really powerful one.
The entrepreneur who's not losing sleep about that doesn't realize that they probably have one. And so hopefully this wakes them up that you might have one of these, rainmakers or single points of failure, and you can't put yourself in that position.
No, it should terrify you. Yeah. Now, it doesn't have to be a super expensive or super time-consuming solution, but you need to find one. Yeah. So I think that's really wise. I mean, I'm all for unique ability, but I'm also all for unique ability teamwork, which means working together on that.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. I think the rainmaker world is going away. That puts a cap on your business, and maybe you haven't gotten the vibe of my brand, but it's like I don't like ceilings. They're for breaking. And so I know that I can only manage through one person for so long before we get stuck. And I hate getting stuck. So I almost look at it as the best offense is a good defense.
Which is really cool. And here's the other part, actually, the part that's keeping a lot of entrepreneurs up at night is they are that person.
Oh, big time.
They're the rainmaker. They're the single point of failure. It's like that leads to them feeling trapped and stuck. So I think what you've just opened up is a huge door, a huge opportunity to go, oh my God, it doesn't only have to be me. I don't know what I'm doing. I just keep doing it. It keeps working. Please, Lord, someone come in and figure out how else we can do this. So I think, yes, there's another person possibly, but the chance that it's you is actually even probably more likely.
Well, it's funny because I'm going through this transition in my business. So I'm very proud to say, we drink our own champagne. So everything that is in my book.
I'm so stealing that.
Way better than eat your own dog food. I know. I found that from someone and I'm like, that will be mine now.
I'm stealing that too.
Yeah, you should. And everything that's in the book, we do for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I have a CRO who is running our marketing and sales and pulling me out of the seat. And gosh, talk about a like weird warped mirror world of seeing my own stuff in some ways used against me. But it was so eye-opening that, how I sell and how I talk about it isn't the way that's going to make our CRO and that team successful. They needed to adopt the system. They had the system, but they needed to adopt it and use it for themselves. And I think that was really, really inspiring for me. Is it gave me a lot of trust, even at a deeper level than I already had, that this is a really reliable system. If somebody else can take it, make it their own, and then, play within those boundaries. And, I was a single point of failure too, right? I'm the person who came up with it. So of course I can talk on it, but it doesn't mean I can continue to be it.
And you've grown your team so much in the past couple of years, and you've freed yourself. Okay, so just say how much. You have a self-managing company. So how many hours a week are you spending in the business right now?
Credit where credit's due. So I was hitting my head on the ceiling in my end of my first full year, and I joined the eLeap Academy. And then I was a student there, fell in love with Gino's wisdom and content another way, a different way. And we busted through that ceiling. And then now we run on EOS. So let's just be clear how I got there. And yeah, I think, here's the funny story. I don't know exactly how many team members I have. That's the book. Yep. Because my integrator knows, and that's his job.
Yeah.
No, it sounds terrible. And I love my team and I love each of you, but I can't, I think it's 14. We have a full leadership team, and we're in a transition where I'm going to only be there 8 hours a week.
And that is very fast progress, I will say. To go from where you started to this level of self-managing so quickly, well done.
One of our values is urgency. We're running out of time. I have some weird, connections to the Hamilton character. So it shows up in some of my stuff on occasion.
I love every second of that. So how can people find you if they're like, oh my God, I need this? Because I have those questions. I know we're doing a lot of the right things. I'm just not sure which ones. I don't know where the gaps are, the leaks are happening. So if people want to apply this, obviously the book is fantastic. I am also of the mindset of the cool thing about books is they tell me who's thinking I want to get closer to. And if there's a who out there who can do it for me, so I don't have to, I am sign me up. It frees me up to do more what my strength is because you're contributing your strength. That makes us all better. That's kind of the essence of Who Not How. So how can people get the book and how can they reach out to Next Level, to you? What's the best way for people to learn more?
Yeah, so the book is on Amazon. Tell me if this doesn't sound familiar from, the people who I consider mentors. I tried to write the book, so it was a how to install it yourself manual. Yep. It may not be possible, right? And I recognize that as so far as I could communicate in a book that you might actually get to the end of. Otherwise, our website, it's a long URL, but I don't know. I love it. It's readyforthenextlevel.com. Bahaha. Couldn't resist that. Otherwise, I'm always sharing as much as I can on LinkedIn. So I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. But yeah, if you fill out a form, you'll talk to my CRO and they'll get you started.
Awesome. And it's Kyle Mealy, M-E-A-L-Y, right?
M-E-A-L-Y, yes.
Perfect. Okay. Kyle, as always, it is a blast talking to you. Thank you for sharing your entrepreneurial journey, story, whatever you want to call it, because it's fascinating, but it's very clear to see the seeds of what you learned, how your amazing brain works to put stuff together. And I think, to my mind, and this struck me then, it strikes me now, the credibility that it gives me about you to know that it worked in a lab, it worked in a karate school, of all random things. It worked in a digital marketing agency. It works for your own company. It works for your clients' companies. That's how you know a system works when it doesn't have a huge set of constraints. Now, maybe the constraint's 50 million. Maybe it's not. Who knows? But it's really fun, to my mind, to know that it actually applies in that many different circumstances. And of course, to learn how you came to this thinking. So I appreciate hearing all parts of it. And I am so excited because lack of funds, lack of cash flow, lack of revenue, lack of clarity, lack of confidence about this stuff keeps more people up at night than I want to count. So when you add clarity and confidence and capability to this really essential issue for entrepreneurs and for entrepreneurial companies, thank you. This is clearly your contribution to the world, right? One of them. I appreciate that. And I don't know, unless you're in the entrepreneurial world, you don't actually get it. Most people aren't as close to the finances, aka great game of business, as entrepreneurs are. And so if you can have, even one or two people sleep better at night, to my mind, you've been a raving success, but obviously you can have a much bigger impact than that. So thank you for doing the work. Thank you for writing it down in a slightly more digestible form than 60,000 words. So I love that. It's a great book. And thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. I really appreciate it. And I hope that everyone, when you're listening, you're like, this is what I've been looking for.
Well, thank you, Shannon. I really mean it when I say I shouldn't be here, and I was never going to not know where the money is. And yes, I don't have any VC funding, no angel investors. So every dollar matters to me to protect myself and my family and my team. And so if this gives one entrepreneur that little bit of, it finally makes sense, then, the sun comes out and the world is good for me.
Excellent. Well, clearly you should be here because you are.
Right. I did show up today, so.
Yeah, the universe agrees with you, so. Awesome. Kyle, this has been fantastic. I'm excited for you and what you're up to and your next level. I'm excited for the company, and I'm super excited for the impact that this can make on everyone listening. So again, very much appreciate spending the time with you today.
Thank you, Shannon. It was great. Appreciate it.
Awesome.